What's going on, people? Myke C-Town here. I'm doing something a little different. As most of my followers know, I used to do these Walking Dead reviews way back when, but I stopped doing because it was just too much to keep up with. But after this Season 7 premiere, I felt like I had to share some words with you guys about this. Before we get started, just so you know, this will be full of spoilers. So if you've not watched the episode, get off of this video. I don't want to hear a bunch of whiny, meh, you told me it was going to happen. Well, you're the dumbass who watched past this message. Also, I don't want to hear about how much you hate the show and how you don't watch it because it's stupid. Nobody gives a shit. That done, I'll start off by saying I thought this episode was fantastic. It was intense. It was draining. It was heart-wrenching. It was powerful. It was all of that. And after the shitty way they left off with the last season, I was pretty pissed at the writers of this show. I just thought the cliffhanger was really cheap. But after this episode, I'm totally over it. The fact that we went another 20 minutes or so into this episode before actually seeing what happened and who died was actually pissing me off. But in the end, I think it was really well done. This was the arrival of Negan, and the show needed to make sure we understood that this was a major deal. I think the main thing that they wanted to establish was that Rick is not the only badass in the zombie apocalypse. Rick has been feeling himself a lot lately, and even after he got his ass handed to him by the governor, he still had this idea that he was some super badass motherfucker that couldn't be touched. He needed to be taken down a notch. So this episode served to really break Rick down. Rick went from, I'm running things, and you want to make today your last day on Earth, and this just smug fucking attitude, to being tossed around like a little bitch baby rag doll and crying about, we could talk about this, and please don't. This was necessary for us to really feel like this is a change. Rick has not been this broken down the entire show. Sure, he got his ass kicked by the governor, but it wasn't the same thing. And sure, he broke down and cried and lost his mind for a minute after Lori died, but it wasn't the same thing. Neither of those situations really showed his spirits completely decimated. Not only that, neither of them really showed the group having to look at him as something other than a leader and a boss, which is something I feel like we're going to have to deal with as this season goes on. Now, of course, let's talk about the kills. The show had lost its edge a bit over the past few seasons. We haven't lost a really beloved character since Herschel, and I'll admit, that was a hard one. Everyone loved Herschel, but I felt like we needed to lose a core person to give this show the fire that it once had. Tyrese, who I fucking hated, he didn't count. Noah, that death was brutal, but we didn't care that much. Beth was the closest thing that we had, because that was pretty hard, but it wasn't enough. We needed something like this. The show needed to build us up to knock us down, and that's what they did. They made us appreciate this again. So let's talk about Abraham first. I knew that was coming. I called that this whole time. Why? Because he was a major character, but the group would not be irreparable without his loss. I felt like it would be a cool kill, but it would kind of still be a cheap kill. So when he got bashed in the head, it didn't really affect me that much because, in a way, I knew it was coming. The brutality of it is what got me. I didn't expect them to show so much of it, especially the repeated blows once Abraham was already dead and the shot of his head turned to mush on the ground. That made that death really hit us. No pun. But I'll say, my boy Abraham went out like a G, man. He gave the deuces, and he told Negan to suck his nuts. Gangsta. Now we'll talk about the one that really made everyone talk, and that's Glenn. Now, I've read the comics, so I saw the death of Glenn play out in print. However, after the dumpster fuckery, I really didn't think they'd actually do it. The kickback from fans over the fake dumpster death was pretty much overwhelming, so I thought they'd leave Glenn alone for a while. But I'm glad to see I was wrong, and I'm glad to see that they had the balls to do it the way that they did. Was it gory? Yes. Was it hard to watch? Sure, maybe for some people, but was it too far? Fuck no, man! It was right on the money! Our emotions concerning Glenn have been on a roller coaster. From him almost dying due to Merlin the governor, to almost dying from the sickness at the prison, to his determination to find Maggie after the prison, to him finding her, to him knocking her up, to the dumpster death, to being brought back, to this, to getting the death that a character as important as him deserves. And the gore was necessary, in my opinion, to make a point that this is a brand new beginning, you sorry shits. Anyone can get got on this show, and now we're seeing that they're taking the little kid gloves off. This is the brutality of the zombie apocalypse. We're now seeing that the zombies are a small fraction of our fears in this world. The writers of this show want you to never forget that human beings can be far more evil, vile, and sadistic than a zombie could ever be. Now, what prompted me to do this video was watching Peter Rosenberg of Hot 97 whining on radio about how it went too far, and he actually said it was jumping the shark. He cried that they didn't have to show the decimated heads of our fallen friends. They didn't have to. No, they didn't, but I'm glad that they did. It was a reminder that you're not watching fucking Sex and the City. This is a show about a zombie apocalypse, and if this were real, do you think everything would be butterflies and rainbows? If this was too brutal for you, then you have no business watching a show about zombies. So for all you whiny titty babies blubbering on about how this was just too much for your sensitive eyes to watch, fine. Turn it off and go watch reruns of fucking Seventh Heaven. But stop bitching about it, because the rest of us don't want to hear it, and we sure as shit don't want the writers to be scared to ever broadcast the brutality of a show about a brutal world. I also want to talk about Andrew Lincoln for a second. If anyone ever doubted his acting abilities, watch this episode, man. Every scrunch of his face when Negan is making him his bitch, we see it, and we feel it, and we believe it. And when Negan is trying to make him cut off Carl's arm, we see the anguish in his face. We see the fear, and him blowing that booger snot bubble and then sucking it back in. That's dedication to a character, man. He seriously killed this entire episode. And the guy that they picked for Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, my girlfriend said he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be acting like this. And that's what makes his character so perfect. And that's what made the actor choice so perfect. The people who are the most crazy and sadistic ones in this world, they aren't broadcasting it on a t-shirt. He was great in this role, and I really cannot wait to see more of him. The aftermath is what I think is going to be really interesting. We now see Abraham's two love interests, Sasha and Rosita, have to collaboratively deal with his death. We'll also have to now see how Daryl deals with the guilt of being the one that caused Glenn's death. And Rick. How is Rick going to deal with being knocked down 12 pegs? How is he going to deal with having his two main sidekicks taken away? And how much more brutality is he going to have to endure from Negan? Comic book readers, are we finally going to see the hand thing happen? Which is what I was expecting to happen when he got dragged into the RV by Negan, but it didn't. Anyway, I think this is a great lead off to the season. By the end of this episode, my stomach was hurting from being in knots for a fucking hour. The Walking Dead usually has great season premieres, and this was no exception. I just hope that they can keep the momentum going, so I guess we'll have to see. But let me know what you guys think. Leave some comments in the comment section down there. As usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright? Peace